Let's start with I'm thinking of ending things.
All right, and as this film is a Charlie Kaufman film, which if you listen to episode one, you might have remember Alistair mentioning him as his screenwriter of choice. So I'm going to let him do the intro for this because I have a feeling he's going to start gushing pretty soon.
Well, I'll try not to get too carried away, but yeah, you're right. Charlie Kaufman writes and directs this film. I'm obviously a big fan, so I am trying to remain slightly unbiased.
Bullshit.
I don't think I will be, but we'll see how we get along. But yeah, so it's written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, based on the novel by Ian Reid. And it stars Jessie Buckley, another Jessie, and Jesse Plemons, Tony Collette, and David Thewlis. And so basically, the story is
Confusing.
confusing, but the premise, as introduced to us, is basically there's a couple, and they're on a bit of a road trip because Jesse Buckley's character is going to visit Jesse Plemons' parents.
After
in
a
the
very
middle of nowhere.
short amount of time seeing each other.
After they've been together for not too long.
Yeah.
I think 6 weeks, they say in the film. So it's kind of it's quite a laboured film. It's quite long.
You're telling me.
And it goes on, and it's got these. It's basically split into, you'd say, I guess, well, 3 or 4 major parts. There's part 1 where they're driving, part 2 when they're at the house, part 3 when they're driving back, and part 4 at a school.
Yeah.
Which develops into a
Yeah.
very grand sequence at the end.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's hard to get too into it without giving spoilers away. But yeah, stuff happens. But like the sequencing, like personally, the driving in the beginning, I thought that went on for so long. I was like, I'm so ready for this conversation to end in this car. But well, what did you make of it anyway? Just to get your initial impression.
Well, again, trying to avoid all spoilers, but I think the thing that I enjoyed about it the most was the fact that these kind of laboured things that we're talking about, like the laboured sequences, serve a very particular purpose in the narrative structure. And I think one of the big things about the narrative structure of this is the passing of time, and it's the kind of slippage between when in your present experience time moves in a very linear way and you're kind of experiencing things as they happen, so they are quite drawn out, and then as you revert to your memories of things in the past, they suddenly change and it's abridged, and you have very strange kind of I guess there are certain things that trigger different memories or different experiences that kind of reveal themselves later in the film as things start to warp a little bit and you're not sure how time's moving anymore.
The irony is that was as laboured as the film is, that description. But yeah, for anyone that's slightly confused, like I watched the trailer before, and it didn't turn out how I thought it was depicted in the trailer. So if you've got an expectation of what you think it's going to be about and who it's going to be following, it's not going to be that. I'm just telling you now.
Yeah.
And early on, a lot earlier than I expected, actually, they sort of played their hand and revealed like the twist, I guess you'd call it. It's not really a twist, but it's like how the narrative is going to play out. And in fact, I thought it was done like it was a benefit to them that they did it early, because it's sort of early on you start to realise that something's not quite right, something's slightly off about the relationship, about the characters, about how things are happening around them. And then once you clock what is going on, which again I'm not going to say, but once I got there, I was like, okay, I'm on board with that. It's fine. And I felt it benefited it from doing it early, because then I feel like if they'd left it till like the third act to reveal how everything is working, a lot of people would have already been lost by that point. But because they did it quite early on, I appreciated that I could then follow it a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. I think Is it a spoiler to say that the title is ever so slightly misleading?
Well, I guessed what the title meant when we first talked about this, and I feel so smug for guessing. But yeah, I mean, let's not, just in case. I mean,
Well, I'm not going to say any more than that.
let's just
That's
say
what I'm leaving
you
it at.
think it's related to the relationship at the heart of it, but once you get into it, you realise that there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't think I liked it as much as you. Like, for anyone that isn't familiar with Kaufman, he wrote Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Adaptation, Being John Malkovich, which are all fucking amazing films.
And his best one, Synecdoche, New York, in my opinion.
Yeah, was that his directorial debut? I think it was.
I don't know.
I have a feeling it was, but so he was a writer before, and then he started adopting the director's role as well. Personally, I think he's a much better writer than he is writer. I think he's one of the best around.
Yeah.
But the thing, like the films I just named, especially for me, Eternal Sunshine, his scripts are always and stories are always quite bleak and not nihilistic, but slightly
Very existential.
yeah. And then I found like that when he had a different director working on his stories, it sort of gave it some levity and a bit of heart.
I think that's one of the things is he has an amazing artistic vision, but I think he gets wrapped up when he's got too much responsibility, and he needs someone else to interpret some of that vision.
Yeah, and that's how I felt watching this. I was like, I know your work can be done differently to this, but because he obviously has so much creative control now, it is just fully making the film he wants to make, which is a good and bad thing. But
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it, but not nearly as much as you, I don't think.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well, we'll get onto the ratings in a second, but there was one thing that I did want to say. It's something that I watched this with Zoe, and we were talking about it, and
Alistair's just a humble brag that he has a girlfriend. Like he's some
Again.
15-year-old. Like, oh, I've got a girlfriend. We watch films together.
well, yeah.
Hi, Zoe.
But yeah, we were talking about something. I hadn't heard of this concept, but she was telling me about, and we weren't sure if this was the actual name of it, but something called your legend years. And it's kind of when you're coming to the end of your life. And this will make sense if you watch the film, this little kind of segue. But these years are kind of determined by the time when you've kind of achieved all that you're going to achieve in your life. And you've sort of become a little bit irrelevant to society because you're no longer fulfilling a use. So instead of like creating new memories, you start to recite your old memories. And basically you determine that what you're going to do with the rest of your life is share those memories onto other people in the hope that they will remember you. It's sort of like a little bit about legacy, but it's also kind of an internalized thing. It's quite interesting.
I quite like the main thing I liked about it was the constant references to like different forms of media. Like characters will mention like Wordsworth, and then they'll reference films that they've seen or are influenced by.
Yeah.
And then other characters will openly say you are too into these forms of media and it's warping how you see the world. And it is one of the underlying things is that the obsession with media does change people's expectations of reality. So they start thinking, they think it's always going to be a happy ending, or that people have to look a certain way, or certain situations have to end in such a fashion due to being like watching too many movies or reading too many books and stuff. And I thought the way that carried on throughout the film, even till the finale, where I won't say what happens, but there's basically a direct rip from A Beautiful Mind at the end of that. And I was like, once I realised that, I was like, okay, like I appreciate that is a common thread. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was too long. But it wasn't that it was too long.
I'll accept that.
It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it felt like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that it was too long. It was just, I think, because it is such a bleak.
It's bleak and it's dialogue heavy.
Yeah.
It's going to feel long.
Yeah, it just feels longer than it is.
Yeah. Anyway, let's do some ratings. I'm going to go first.
Okay, yeah, you should.
I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Suck a dick. Oh, no.
I gave it an 8 out of 10. I really
Alistair.
enjoyed it. I was almost stumming and ahhing about a 9, but I was like, no, I can't. I've got to give it an 8.
This cannot be the first 9 on this show.
No, exactly. I thought it doesn't make the grade, but I gave it an 8. I thought it was really enjoyable. Well, if you can call it enjoyable. It
I
ticks
don't. Yeah,
all
I
the
don't think
boxes for
enjoyable
me.
is the word for this. Like, it's a good film, but it's not enjoyable. Is not the right word.
Endurable,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
you feel better for having sat through it just because you've accomplished something.
Yeah, true. Go on then. What's the...
Well, I I liked it, but not nearly as much as you. I thought it was a thin line between being too self-indulgent and just slightly pretentious from being a pretentious in film.
Kaufman film, of course it's going to be fucking
I know, but this is what I'm saying. Being pretentious in filmmaking isn't a bad thing, but there's a thin line between going too far the other way, and I feel like it was slightly stumbling over that line sometimes.
Okay.
I gave it a 6.
A 6. Well, if you take the average, that's a 7, and that's not a bad score.
Yeah, that's all right. I was debating a 7, but when I started making notes for this podcast, I realised I had more problems with it than I did positive.
Okay.
So, but the acting's really good. Like the direction's fucking great because he obviously did what he wanted to do.
That was the other thing I was going to say. Jessie Buckley, what a performance!
She was really good.
That was amazing. I was really impressed.
I could have done with a little bit more Toni Collette, if I'm honest, just because she's great and everything.
Well, yeah.
But you can't have it all.